2 months before the elections was like really the government thought this is impossible that they can win, right? But the discontent of the Venezuelans is it's like so high that those elections were lost by landslide with 30%.
Wow.
And, when this regime is will fall, we are gonna celebrate, we're gonna party, like that's gonna be the most amazing night we have ever had. And that didn't happen. That didn't happen for the vast majority of Venezuelans in Venezuela.
It seems as if this current Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is going to be able to remain in power, perhaps as long as she remains in good graces of Trump. But perhaps her brother Jorge, who's the head of the parliament, has something to say about whether her 90-day temporary interim status will be extended.
When Chavez died, you realize that he wasn't just a politician, that he was really some kind of god to a lot of the Venezuelan people, and to poor people, let's say. He was a messiah for the poor,
Welcome back to Fractured. Today we have a really great honor of getting a chance to have Gaby Ramirez, who's a Venezuelan journalist, come back onto the show. We've worked with her in the past, talking specifically about her award-winning piece, Widowed by Europe's Borders, which really deals with a lot of migration issues in the east of Europe. But today we're actually going to talk about Venezuela and the issues that are facing her home country. So Gaby's actually coming to us from Berlin, but is going to be able to kind of unpack this very, very chaotic start to 2026, and then help us dive a little bit into the background of how does Venezuela end up in the current situation that it's in. And so Gaby, thank you so much for joining us again. It's a pleasure to connect again. And then also I'm going to get a chance to see you in person very soon. So thanks for taking the time tonight on your busy Friday to hang out with us for a bit and kind of unpack the what I would consider the chaos of Venezuela right now. So thanks so much for joining us. And I would say I honestly don't know where to start with this conversation. So let's maybe figure out, like, where are we right now? For anyone who has been maybe desensitized by the chaotic news cycle that keeps going, insane and taking us all over the globe, maybe they tuned out from Venezuela within a week of Maduro's, I don't know what you want to call it, a kidnapping, capture, extradition. But since then, maybe people have kind of stopped paying attention. So what is going on in Venezuela at the current moment?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doug, for having me. As you said, it's been really 75 years of January, it feels like. And so much has happened with a speed that really touches the unreal. So it is difficult to explain. But at the moment, so basically Maduro was extradited by military intervention in Venezuela on the 3rd of January. And since then, the U.S. President Donald Trump has said that the U.S. is going to run the country after they took Maduro and his wife, Silvia Flores, with him to the New York to be prosecuted for narco-traffic charges. And since then, the U.S. has said that they're running the country with acting President Delcy Rodriguez, who was before the vice president, and she has been running the country with a very fragile pact with the military to and giving economical concessions to the United States with the hope that she could remain in power and that her party could remain in power. So it has definitely been shattered of the status quo, but democracy isn't back in Venezuela as we Venezuelans all over the world thought it would be. Had this very big hope when we saw the news that Maduro was gone. But as we now understand that the leader of this mafia and dictator that has been removed doesn't mean that the Madurism is gone or the structure of this government has been has fallen. So yeah, now we are in a very complex situation with the US saying that they are going to run the country with honestly more questions than answers, and with things being a little bit difficult to assess because we on one side you see some good things happening. So for example, we are seeing the release of political prisoners, not as many as the government has announced. They have said that there are over 600 political prisoners that have been released, which is not true. According to different NGOs, they have said that it's less than 200 and maybe like a 7% of all the political prisoners that we have in the country. But this is happening now after after years without releasing political prisoners, definitely because of the pressure that the United States has put in the Venezuelan government to support this their decisions of what they want. Of course, we are clear that the interest of the U.S. government has been on economical and oil interests, and we are not naive on thinking that the U.S. government wants to a democracy back in Venezuela, as sometimes they say, but yeah. So as I said, like it's I think it is a moment that is helping because we are seeing this kind of positive developments happening, and there is a lot of discussions and negotiations happening behind closed doors that we are just not aware of, and that I try not to to speculate about this geopolitical chess because there are just so many pieces moving. But what I do try as a journalist is to put the attention onto the Venezuelan people and what they are going through right now and how they are experiencing this chaos, really. Because something that has really surprised me is how quickly the conversation moved to on the international media and on mainstream media to talk about abstraction of power and question how legal or not legal the extraction of Maduro was by the United States, and oil interests and all the precedents that this military intervention set for the political order of the world. But the story very quickly ceased to be about Venezuelans, and I think that really this moment more than ever, Venezuelans need to be present in this story, present in the narrative, as as political people, but also as people that have experienced what this dictatorship has done to our country, and not just the Venezuelans inside the country, but more than 8 million of people that have left the country because of the conditions that the country is in.
Yeah, you're taking all of my data and all my numbers away from me, so there's nothing for me to say. I could just let you go. But yeah, we could definitely talk about the nearly 8 million refugees that are Venezuelan that are scattered around South America and in the U.S., the majority of which are not in the United States. So all of the rhetoric in America about all of Venezuelans coming to them is not true is not even remotely close. I'm wondering how we're going to have an episode coming up very soon where we do a roundtable discussion about a lot of different topics. One of our core team members here, Angel Ronaldo Cifontes, is also Venezuelan. He's a journalist who lives here in Athens, and he's going to be on the show. And to your conversation point about Venezuelans being able to speak themselves, when I told him about the show, he said, "Oh, I have plenty to say." So I'm really looking forward to talking with him about what this looks like from the ground level. It seems as if this current Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is going to be able to remain in power, perhaps as long as she remains in good graces of Trump. But perhaps her brother Jorge, who's the head of the parliament, has something to say about whether her 90-day temporary interim status will be extended. I'm wondering what can happen over the course if, for instance, a major movement inside the parliament says, no, we don't want any piece of this government to remain. What do you think the political reality would look like? Will we return back to a previous election cycle where you have a lot of different players on the opposition side? It's not necessarily just who ends up facing Maduro in the last election. Would Machado return? Would Guaido return? Would these other characters and major players in opposition, do you think would they seize the opportunity to try to reclaim the leadership that they were fighting for in the previous cycles?
Yeah. So first, to your first point, we have to remember that the acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, and her brother, and all the structure that is in place at the moment in Venezuela is as illegitimate as Maduro. So the assembly can say whatever they want, but they are as illegitimate and as Maduro himself. So definitely, the opposition has always demonstrated that they are ready to take power and that they are, they have fought for democracy back in the country. And it's been really surprising to see, first Trump to dismiss Maria Corina Machado's leadership. As he has done it, or as he did it, the first press conference that he held, he said that Machado didn't have the support, enough support of Venezuelan people, which was really upsetting and really disappointing for Venezuelans because, I even was covering the elections in Venezuela in 2024, and I am a witness of how this woman worked so hard to put in place a system that managed to demonstrate that the government reached the elections by digitalizing 80% of the actas, the tally sheets from the elections. And, the opposition went to elections that were not fair, were not free at all, under a system that was definitely on the advantage of the government. And still, she managed to bring this hope and this inspiration back to so many Venezuelans that didn't want to vote, and not just within the country, but many Venezuelans that I met on a flight from Berlin to Caracas were traveling to Venezuela only because they wanted to vote. And I think that is remarkable to think of the amount of the level of commitment the Venezuelans have given to the country. The flying hours, spending so much money as well on a flight to be able to be part of this moment back in 2024.
And she wasn't even on the ballot because they basically said that she's guilty of treason and that she's violated the Constitution for foreign intervention simply because she's fighting for democracy and looking to the international community through digital platforms to say this guy has to go, and then they they label her treasonous. It's like, it's insane. And then knowing that she is the real force to get people to actually show up and knock him out from an actual legal vote that's recognized, that is not recognized internationally, with Maduro saying that he won overwhelmingly. And no one in the international community has acknowledged any of the elections that he's ever won. All of them have been rejected by international, but there's 14 years of his rule.
Yeah, I mean, she was banned from any kind of power political position for like 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I mean, she she even put herself, she brought herself down to give the opportunity to this other politician, Edmundo González Urrutia, who is now the elect president from the 2024 elections, and this man was really not known by anyone in the country. And in a campaign that lasted like 2 months before the elections, was like, really, the government thought this is impossible that they can win, right? But the discontent of the Venezuelans is it's like so high that those elections were lost by landslide with 30%. Wow. And this is proved, which I think it is remarkable. It is important to understand at the moment. But yeah, back to your question. I think the opposition is really taking their steps to be able to be part of this transition. I think this is going to happen with definitely the support of the United States, because, well, Trump has also said that he would like to have Maria Corina as part of this transition, but as like at the first moment that Maduro is taken down, we thought, okay, now what's going to happen is that Maria Corina or Edmundo González is going to come back, right? But I think it's not only about, I think the strategy here is about keeping some kind of order in the country. And that's why this kind of democratic transition takes time, and also takes requires to have some kind of leadership from the other party, So I think the opinion of many Venezuelans is that we don't want to see any part of this government on a next election, for example. But I do believe that if we want this to develop in a peaceful and the most easy way, it will take to have an election where members of both parties will have to show up, and we will have to go to elections again. I think according to our constitution, that's what we must do as well. Again, it's difficult to assess because nothing what is in place now is legitimate. And if we go back to the constitution, yes, when the president is not there, 90 days later, you have to have an election. The vice president becomes the acting president in the meantime. And what we are hoping is that we can definitely have elections that can be transparent and fair, and with international observers, and they can be recognized as legitimate. I don't think that, and I mean, I think with the United States being there, that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, essentially you have 20, almost 30 straight years of this type of government in power since Chavez comes in with the Bolivian revolution. Like, I mean, and then you have this like kind of shift from him to Maduro as the vice president at the time, and he gets named as the heir apparent. And now here you have Delcy as the forced apparent heir, but may be continuing identically the same types of policies that Maduro destroyed the economy and destroyed the country. He didn't receive a country in good condition from Chavez as he left. It's interesting, though, that the current reality is very similar to the reality that Chavez rode as a wave to get into office in '98. He was able to play off of this like discontent, this need to move on from the cronyism and the corruption of 40 years after the dictatorship ends in '58. You have 40 years of essentially democracy, but it doesn't feel like that for the people, and it's very inequitable. But now you have, everything gets nationalized. You have a whole new version of corruption and destruction of the economy and hyperinflation. It's insane when you think about when people complain about inflation in America or the UK and everyone's freaking out over a percentage point and it flips elections. I'm like, just check out Venezuela, check out Argentina, check out Zimbabwe or something. It's like get a gut check on really what's going on. I wonder like how the average Venezuelan right now is really how split perhaps, and this is the way the whole world is now seen, is that like we are divided, but I feel like there are a lot of forces that are dividing us versus us already being divided. So I'm curious about, just from the Venezuelan population in America, we saw a lot of celebration in South Florida and Miami. We saw a lot of, confusion in the Midwest. People in New York were also both excited and then also very fearful of what's happening to their family members at home. So from a political standpoint, does anybody right now have faith that this is going to be a major turning point for something better? Or do you feel that everyone is kind of polarized to the point where we're just going to kind of grind to some sort of stagnant halt politically?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think really the majority of the people I have talked to, they are really, really hopeful that this is the beginning of the end of this regime that we have had for 30 years. And yeah, really a lot of hope that with the US investment as well into the oil industry, it will create new jobs for Venezuelans, especially back to the 80s and 70s when our oil industry was a boom, right? So I've seen also like reports where people are really expecting that they can get their jobs back. PDVSA, which is our oil company, and yeah, I think in terms of celebration, we didn't really see that inside Venezuela, which is really crazy to think, because I think most of the people always thought that when this regime will fall, we are gonna celebrate, we're gonna party, like that's gonna be the most amazing night we have ever had, and that didn't happen. That didn't happen for the vast majority of Venezuelans in Venezuela. Because of fear, because of repression. I mean, really right after the attack, there were already military officers detaining people if you had even a message on WhatsApp where you were demonstrating any kind of support to the US military intervention. And that was, again, the same experience we had after the elections were reached, when people were to protest, and we had 2,000 prisoners in a matter of 4 or 3 days, 2,000 prisoners because of because they were protesting against the elections. But not even. There are cases of people that were just standing by a protest, and they were taken because they were observing the protest, using their right as an observer or documenting something. So, and it's the same for journalists. After the military attack, journalists have been imprisoned for doing their jobs. So inside on the ground, I can tell that there is still fear and confusion about how this is all gonna help the country. But at the same time, there is hope that really this is the beginning. I think no one is expecting to see things changing overnight, but there is really a lot of hope that with the new changes and the new developments. I mean, just yesterday, the United States had announced that there are flights now, that there will be flights flying from the United States directly to Venezuela, which is also unprecedented. We haven't had that for more than 9 years. And that is also going to be a new income for the country, which again is it's a very complex assessment, because on one hand it's like, oh my gosh, this is so good, like a lot of Venezuelans are going to be able to fly, to go and visit their families, to have these reunions with people they maybe haven't seen in such a long time. But at the same time, you think, okay, this is all happening while the same structure is in place. So this actually supporting some kind of order in the country, while the same regime nothing has changed politically, So it is a very complex and confusing moment for a lot of Venezuelans again, and yeah, again, like I think this celebration that we were hoping to have didn't happen at all. It's really, for me, it has been cathartic to see Maduro in a prison, in court in New York. It's been a dream, like to see a man that has stolen elections, that has it is committed countless violations of human rights, killed Venezuelans on the streets in our protests in 2017 and 2014, and several protests that I lived and that I covered as a journalist while I was there. So it is really amazing to see, but at the same time it's bittersweet, because you think of how this happened and how we got here. And it feels that, that now we have the US running the country, whatever that means for us, and the question of how long this is going to stay like that, right? But I really go back to the resilience and to the power of the Venezuelan people. And I think that the Venezuelan people has always demonstrated that they want democracy, and that they have a voice and they have power. So I really believe that resistance is going to continue, and that the worst has passed. That's my hope. Yeah.
Well, we hope the same for the Venezuelan people and for you and your family and friends. It's obviously a complex and confusing time for everybody. I could understand why you would be like relishing these types of images, and then yet at the same time not really having a whole lot of confidence about what would come next. So just from a personal perspective, it would be amazing if we could only have 2-month election cycle. That would be fantastic. But I don't know what that looks like in America. We deal with it for way, way, way too long. But I kind of feel like right now, if you really wanted to understand what's going on in American politics, you could just read a history book about Venezuelan politics over the course of the last, say, 30 years. And it's uncanny to me to see how our current leader, Trump, is kind of playing the Chavez playbook. They rallied the same group of people. They argued for the same type of problems. I think maybe the only difference is that like Trump was never in the military. He didn't stage a coup. He didn't go to prison for years in advance prior to to his like actual bid for office. But he played the same kind of card of the system is corrupt, it's rotten, and I'm not part of it. And this felt like the way that Chavez was able to like, and then utilize social media, not social media, but television, and then get onto TV. And at a time when the media was basically saying, wow, we're going to get ratings off of this guy. And then Chavez was able to get all those ratings to the point where even as president, he was basically a TV star. So we see the same thing playing out in very, very unique ways. But there feels like there's a core here that you just need to throw a lot of grenades at the existing establishment to claim that you are against it and therefore they should trust you. And even if you have no experience and you have no real, message other than not this, and this is corrupt and I'm not, it seems like it sticks. Chavez was like super successful in the beginning, and then it felt like slowly but surely he shifted away towards more of an authoritarian event. I don't know how old were you at the time when you have a coup against him in the earlier years, but like it feels like this situation that Maduro like benefited from was like kind of the ground was set for him, and that I wonder can you remember back to a time when Chavez actually passes away and then Maduro becomes president? Did you feel in any way, or do you think that Venezuelans in general felt in any way that things were going to get better? That like the hyperinflation would end, that the somehow they would privatize things again, and that life would kind of like there was hope, or was this time period like very unmoved as an opportunity?
When Chavez died, you realize that he wasn't just a politician, that he was really some kind of god to a lot of the Venezuelan people, and to poor people, let's say. He was a messiah for the poor, and it was that was 2013, and I remember people would stand in line for hours just to see for 2 seconds the coffin where he was in this military base where he was receiving his last honors. And honestly, I think that's when personally I realized that this was not an opportunity to change the regime, although the things were already really bad in the country, right? But he was so smart that before he died, he pointed Maduro as his successor, right? And like a lot of people thought like, okay, this is impossible, that this man that also no one knew Maduro. He was a boss driver, and it's not about disqualifying him, but like he was not qualified to become the president of Venezuela. And I don't know what Chavez saw on this man, but he pointed him, and I really thought like, well, it's not that people are gonna vote for Maduro because Chavez said, because right, like you will vote with your brain and realize that this man is not prepared for it. And I remember that was actually the first time I went to vote, because I had just turned 18, and I had the age to cast my first vote ever. And it was so exciting because I really thought, okay, finally, I had lived all my life since I was born until that moment under the Chavez regime. And well, those elections that year were also contested by the opposition, but nothing else happened. And again, I think at that time people really voted blindly for Maduro because they thought that it was a matter of commitment to Chavez, and there was all this emotional sentiment of this our leader just died, and that's why we are gonna support what our leader's last wishes. And what Maduro inherited was already a structure that was very weak in terms of our institutions. Like all our institutions were really weak by Chavez regime, and we didn't have the richness of the oil that we had during Chavez regime. So Maduro, with his incompetence, he just turned his power into really repression because he didn't know what to do, and he didn't have the tools on how to lead the country. So that's honestly when the repression in the streets became really brutal. It was, I think, well, the year that we had the most killed Venezuelans in a protest has been 2017 under Maduro's regime, and it was when Venezuelans were tired of it, and everyone went out to the streets, and what the military forces did was just kill people. So yeah, I think what Maduro inherited was definitely that poor institutions, but he just didn't have the tools to succeed. And sorry, I'll take that back. I think it's not that just he didn't have the tools, but he was just an authoritarian that he just wanted to remain in power at all costs, and that's what he managed to do very well.
It's interesting because back then, in this time period when Maduro and his forces are actually shooting protesters, Trump is a president at the time, and he says nothing about it. He does not give temporary protected status to any Venezuelans. He resists it at every turn. Ironically, right now, he's talking about, a swift military response to what's happening in Iran for exactly the same behavior from a government that is reeling from massive protests. And it's not until Biden comes in that any Venezuelans get a TPS status, but it's only for a very small percentage of Venezuelans seeking protections. It's only like 300,000 Venezuelans already in the country, so it had no bearing on any of the new people arriving. And yet, if you read some news sources in America, you'd think there's 10 million Venezuelans in America or something. And it's like, it's not even remotely close to that. It's not even a million. It's like 700,000 total from recent statistics from UNHCR. But at the time, 300,000 are getting this protection. And now you feel like this government simultaneously will come in and decapitate Maduro, take out the government, leave a pliant puppet in position with Delcy and say, oh, well, we're not going to run your country, but we're going to run your country from a distance. I'm curious if you think that the privatization of privatization of the oil industry again is a decision of this administration, of Rodriguez's administration, or orders from the Trump administration, because that seemed like very in broad daylight the motivation to do this. Do you think it's, I don't know, there's like layers of complexity to the back and forth with how America, specifically the Trump administration, handles Venezuela's situation, its legal realities. Do you think that it's as obvious as it seems, or there's something else going on?
So, like legally now, to be able to invest in Venezuela and to bring back the oil industry as it was before, Venezuela need to collaborate. Like the Venezuelan oil company PDVSA needs to have a joint venture in which Venezuela receives 50% of the profits. That's what Chavez did, and that's still in place. I think from really a legal perspective, it is really hard that the Venezuelan, that the U.S. government can will manage to change that and to bring these oil international companies to invest in Venezuela, because it is just really it's not a great idea for businesses to do it under this current legal frame, right? So I definitely think that for the U.S. and for Venezuelan for the Venezuelan government to remain in power as they want, they will have to change that, and that's gonna take some time, because as well that has need to be approved by the Congress. So it is really a legal mess here that in so many layers and so many complexities that is really difficult to assess. I mean, I'm not an expert on this topic, but yeah, I really think that when like as I was saying before, a lot of people when Maduro was removed by the intervention, a lot of people just started worrying about Venezuela, the U.S. taking Venezuelan oil, and like, oh my gosh, poor Venezuelans that the U.S. is invading, and and there are so many other questions that they were not being asked, and they are still not being asked. And is this, for example, it's not that easy just to take the Venezuelan oil. And even if you wanted to take the Venezuelan oil, you will need to invest an insane amount of money to reestablish and to restore the oil infrastructure that has been destroyed for the last 30 years. So that's something that's not going to happen overnight, and that's something that will take a lot of investment from the United States. And to be clear also, in Venezuelan history, the United States has been one of the main allies when it comes to oil exports in Venezuela. In the 60s and the 70s, the Venezuelan had a business, a relationship, like economical relationship that actually helped the country. And what we have had for the last 40 years, and that's why really this question of Venezuelan oil is so unimportant to Venezuelans, because for 30 years Venezuelans haven't received any kind of benefit from our from our oil, from our resources. So at this moment, the least the people care is about oil. They care about bringing democracy back, getting rid of this government regime dictatorship that is still in place, and creating the same hope and future they want for the country. So I really think that's where we should put the focus on, and also realize that that it's not about the United States, because that's also something that it has upset a lot of Venezuelans, that it is now a lot about anti-imperialism, right? Because the United States is connected to this change in Venezuela. But for years has been Russia, has been Iran, has been China, who have been taking these resources from Venezuela for free, because they have not. We have billions on a debt with Iran and China and all these countries. So this is something that we don't take for granted, and I think it is it is just important to recognize that it is not neutral to say, oh, it's hands of Venezuela. When you see these protests in the U.S., I saw in New York, for example, and in Spain, protest hands of Venezuela, referring to the invasion by the United States, when many of these people that are protesting now never protested for the conditions Venezuela have lived through for 30 years, never protested against against our students being killed in the streets in Pacific protests, never protested hospitals that didn't have any kind of medicaments, and kids and babies died in these hospitals because of that. So it is really upsetting, but also really, it shows that sometimes this ideological side doesn't allow you to cover a story neutrally, and that's why again I say that in a country where the courts don't function, the press is not free, and there is no democracy, I think we need to go back to hear what the Venezuelans have experienced, and really put more attention onto those experiences, because sometimes this experience can be considered as a bias, but actually right now those experiences is the closest reality and the closest facts we have to the truth, and to be able to report on this accurately. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if do you feel safe enough to return to work as a journalist in Venezuela right now? And if you did, what would you cover? What would your first story be?
Wow.
Sorry, put you on the spot there.
No, I do not feel safe, and that's unfortunate. But again, the same regime is in place, and there is not any kind of guarantees that journalists can do their job freely under the current administration, and yeah, still journalists are being imprisoned, still journalists are being detained for doing their job. So it is really incredible to see my Venezuelan colleagues still, fighting so hard to bring the truth, and to be able to report. And well, I mean, I can even tell you, like, all the Venezuelan journalists, most of the Venezuelan journalists in Venezuela cannot sign their articles.
They have to be anonymous.
All the stories are being published anonymously because feared of repercussions, and retaliation. So yeah, definitely it is not a safe country to do journalism at the moment. Still, I went there for the elections because I wanted to document this moment, and it's something that I am considering as well. I would love to be part of the people that are documenting this very important moment for our country. And I cannot tell you like the stories I will cover, but just something that I just care a lot is the political prisoners situation at the moment. I have been covering since 2024 when I was there for the elections, following a family, stories of families that have been imprisoned, especially teenagers. They were put in prison after the elections were reached. So I think that's a story that I would like to continue to cover. And I mean the amount of stories, and they will be part of this transition are just countless. So it is definitely a dream for me to be able to go back and to be able to do my job there freely.
So back then in that election that you were covering, did you feel that this was going to be the one where Maduro was going to be done?
Yes, I did. So the reality is that I was writing a story about. No, I was not writing a story. First, I was trying to register to be able to vote here in Berlin at the Venezuelan consulate. And it was so frustrating that they rejected me for really stupid, insane reasons. They didn't allow me to register, so I was not able to vote as anyone should be able to do as a Venezuelan living abroad, you know. And I was so frustrated when I was there. I really 98% of the people I met in this consulate that day were not able to register either. And I was like, okay, I really need to write a story about all the rules and crazy stuff that the consulate is requiring for you to be able to vote, because that was a clear strategy to avoid the diaspora from voting, right? So that's when I decided to write a story about it. And I started like asking people, not just in Germany, but all across Europe, asking Venezuelans if they were able to register in different consulates in different countries. And then I started hearing of these stories of Venezuelans saying, yeah, no, I was not able to register, but I am going to go to Venezuela to vote. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Like, people are doing this? Like, people are really going to Venezuela to vote? And, you know, Venezuelans, they had never, like, hadn't gone to Venezuela for a year since they left. That they were now returning, of course, to see their families, to reunite with their loved ones, but especially for the election week, to be there, to be able to vote, because they were not allowed in the country they were living in. And that's when I said, you know what? I mean, that's a different story, first of all. It's not just about all the restrictions that the government has put, but the length the Venezuelans are going to be able to be part of this democratic process. And that's when I got just inspiration by my sources to be there. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna go to Venezuela. And literally 2 weeks, I think less than 2 weeks before, I just booked my tickets and said, I'm going there. And you know, the situation was so uncertain with elections that I even found cheap flights, because I guess the airlines are like, this is crazy if you're going there. Like, no one is going to Venezuela right now.
We
And
will
I
pay
felt
you
like,
to go because we're not making any money off of this seat, right? Like, it's empty.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I really, really thought that that was it. You know, there is no way. There is no way that they can reach these elections. There is no way that that we will lose. The discontent is just it's all over. I was in Venezuela for 3 weeks, 1 week before the elections, the election week, and then the week after, and just being part of that of the campaign of the opposition leaders. You know, it was surreal to be there, and hearing all these people screaming with so much hope, and seeing as well that there were people of all class, you know, all social classes were there. It was, you know, there has always been this kind of disparity on who supports the government because of, you know, because of Chavez, that it was Chavez is for the poor people. So there was the government always created that division, right? The rich and the poor. And for me, it was really striking when I was there to see that it was clear that it was all social classes, people from the most impoverished neighborhoods in Caracas attending the opposition rallies. And that's something that I had never seen. And that was just really moving, and a proof that the country has changed, and that we are not where Chavez left Venezuela. And that's huge. Yeah.
Well, I think I would like to take a flight with you the next time this election happens. I'm sure maybe the ticket will be slightly more money because they'll realize that there'll be a lot of people trying to do this. And so, but let's do that. And I have a feeling that this is the one that you'll get the results that you were looking for in the previous one. Gaby, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish the best. And I really hope that you get an opportunity to go back and to practice the journalism that we know you are capable of, but doing it on your home soil.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doug. I really appreciate it.
We'll see you very soon in person, as well as probably on another episode for a different topic. So until then, we'll talk soon.
Right.
So everybody, thank you so much for joining us for this special episode of Fractured, where we got a chance to unpack everything that's happening in Venezuela. And we will be back with a new episode in a short week or two. So check our social media and stay connected, and we'll see you very soon.